wherever holds your.
All right.
Who's that lady?
I-
Okay.
Wait a minute. All right, it's all yours.
All right. This is a little creek that's near our cabin, not too far. And this is kind of a rare opening of light on the creek that day. Usually it's pretty well hooded by the trees and the bushes. So today we're using the ultramarine blue, the cadmium, or the, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, sap green, and yellow light. And I'm going to be very careful about this particular area right here. This is what I'm going to paint first, and then allow the darks to come in and soften the edges of that. So I'm going to look for my spray bottle wherever I put it. I don't know where I put it. Just a minute. Hang on. It's around here someplace. There it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually wet the area up and around back here just a little bit, just a slight bit. And I'm going to start off with the area of light here, because you can't get your colors any more intense than you can at the beginning. So I'm going to take the yellow medium and just a touch of the green. And I'm going to use a little bit more green here and a lot more yellow. And I'm going to simply put this in here as boldly as I can, right in here, and a little bit more green. A bit more yellow. And I'm going to kind of bleed it out from there, like so. And add a little bit down here at the bottom. And then I'm going to start adding the ultramarine blue and the little bit of the burnt sienna here, just a slightly gray, a little bit more ultramarine blue. And I'm going to start going up from there. So this is kind of a very abstract looking piece of work here at the beginning. I'm not overly concerned about the objects. I'm concerned about the shapes. It's always about the shapes. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the ultramarine blue, a little bit of the sap green, and a touch of the burnt sienna, just a very, very little bit, just to slightly gray it. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth, adding some green and some yellows in here in the background, just a slight bit. And then I'm going to bring it down into this area here. That is the shoreline in the background. And then I'm going to take a little bit more of the ultramarine blue and I'm going to put it right up against the yellow here. And it will softly bleed in, it won't flow in. While I've got the yellow here, there's a little bit of yellow I want to add right back in here. And then bring this right down into here. So we're trying to just get the pattern of things going on in here without too much effort, because I can always get in and add more darks. And I'm going to bring this across through here very lightly, because I want to treat the stream a little bit lighter in value. There's this part of rocks here that the water is kind of rumbling over. So I'm going to add a little bit of the cobalt blue in here, like so. And then I'm going to come down and add all light values down here right now at this point. And a little bit more of the yellows over in here, like so. And then some cobalt mixed in with some of the greens I already have. And I'm going to do that right through here, like so. And I'm going to then take my smaller brush and take that cobalt blue with just a little bit of the yellow in there. And I'm gonna kind of tumble it across through here because we're gonna be using a little bit of gouache later on. I want you to kind of experiment using the gouache. And I'm gonna add a little bit of the burnt sienna to this, just for a little bit of warmth in here. Like so, and over here. Like this. Now, I'm gonna take my sponge, wherever it went to. I think I'm losing more things this morning than I care to admit. Huh, there it is. I'm gonna take my sponge at this point, and I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna soften this whole area in here and allow it to kind of wisp out into those dark areas. I'm going to also pick up a little bit of the color up in here. I can always go darker, but it's harder to go lighter. And when it's wet, you get these nice soft passages. I'm going to lift a little bit more in here. And I want this to come up just a little bit more. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to that while I've got it wet. So I'm going to spray the yellow in here like so, a little bit more. I'm having this a little bit more yellow than yellow-green. And then I have a spot right in here that I want to maintain the light, like so. And a touch of yellow back here. And I'm going to go just a little bit right here where the light is kind of tipping that bush alongside the stream. And I'll get rid of some of these white spots up in here. So we have implanted the basic light image. I didn't go too dark to begin with. So I started off by adding water up in here and a little bit across there. Then I started with the yellow right in here as bright as I could get it, because we're going to have this a little bit more yellow in here and have a little bit more stronger focal point. And then I started adding the color up and around it so that it kind of bled into it. So different variations of the sap green, the ultramarine blue, the cobalt blue, a little bit of the burnt sienna through here, and then across over here. Everything is handled light. And these are different variations of the yellow green and the blue green down in here. So it's far less intense. I'm going to get the darks darker in there as we move through this. So you guys can get started on that. If you have any questions, please yell.
Dale?
Yes.
My question is, I don't have cad yellow like you said. I have, are we working with like the lemon yellow or more of a medium yellow? I have gamboge.
Use the medium yellow. The yellow light is a cool yellow. This is a warm yellow.
Okay.
So use the yellow medium. I should say cadmium. I'm used to saying that for the last 40 years. What I'm using here is, it is a cadmium yellow medium from Coors. This is probably one of the 2 cadmiums I use, but just plain yellow medium hue is fine. It doesn't have to be cadmium.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dale, I had the same question with the yellows, because I have this, wow, I've got cad yellow deep, and then I have Hansa yellow light, and permanent yellow light. I don't have the
What's the last one, Deborah?
Permanent yellow light from Holbein.
Yeah, Holbein, okay.
Yeah. Holbein. Mhm.
Try using the Hansa yellow, even though it's a little bit cooler. Again, yellow, the choices of yellows that they give you are different variations of temperature. The cadmium yellow deep is your warmest, cadmium yellow medium is your middle of the road, cadmium yellow light is cool. And then you have the Hansa, which is a little bit cooler than yellow medium, but the Hansa is okay. Then you have nickel yellow, which is cool. Use the Hansa, that should be fine.
Okay,
It is confusing sometimes. I gotta call my wife because I'm having difficulties again. Hold on. Mary, I've been banging. I lost connection on the small iPad.
But they still have connection.
I'm assuming.
They're falling off the corner.
I'm gonna take this down to take a picture of it, so hang on.
It just worked. It was those two cans, honey. It was those two cans.
They're flying around. But try to have everything remain soft, quite a bit lighter than what we're going to end up. Diana, use more water.
I was just rolling my sponge across things. The only part that's a little dark is the blue up in the middle.
But don't get it too dark.
I don't know what.
Nope, I'm taking some off.
It's not. So here's what I can do.
I'll just use this light.
Oops. Okay. I mean, here's the other option. Let's see where they're, right now we're on this two stripes. If you click on this, oh, no, never mind. Okay, better to do that. Okay, arrow. I know, I'm telling you, arrow here and then.
That's all I got.
So what I'm gonna do is shut down the iPad.
We're fine. I don't get it, it wants to slip down.
Well, how are you, huh?
Two. Last time she chewed up on them.
I don't see it. Oh, it's back here.
Okay, so I'll just want to.
Tell it you missed it. Tell that your hair you missed it. Okay, you're back in. I should shut down the iPad.
I'll just use it this way.
You like this better
Yeah,
than
I can
this?
see that. That's too small.
Okay,
Thanks.
you bet.
I'm gonna turn this hair dryer on just for a second. Anybody have any questions at all?
No, but if you want to look, I can show you what I have.
All right, hang on. Okay,
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead. Okay, take your sponge, Diana,
Yeah.
and up in here, push it forward a little bit or up and to the left. Just to
Okay.
soften it as much as you can.
Okay.
And then I did pull up a little bit up in here too with the sponge. You could see how granulated the paper makes the pigment, the darker pigments, which is has a little bit of the mineral in it, will fall to the bottom. It's heavier, which gives a nice grainy effect.
I'm using Stonehenge paper today.
Okay, that's good paper.
It was the only one that was already cut.
I'm waiting for my order from Cheap Joe's today.
What did you get?
I got paints from Core, and I forgot what the other couple things were. And I'm also going to be ordering, I think, 1 or 2 more brushes from Rosemary. I want a larger round brush that they carry. Unfortunately, they don't ship Kolinsky's to the United States, so I'm out of luck there.
I got a set of Kolinsky's. I think it was probably Joe's Artorama.
that's interesting.
I-
Maybe you can get them through dealers, but you can't get them from through Rosemary itself.
It's a Rhapsody Creative
Yeah.
Mark Artist Products. It's a Kolinsky Sable Art Brushes.
Okay,
It might have been a closeout thing. There were like 5 brushes.
yeah,
Dell, I have a question.
yes,
On-
go ahead.
on the-
Barbara.
On the lower right-hand corner, yeah, right there, that little brown, is that a little,
That was a little bit of the burnt sienna. I added some over here that had dissipated, but I added a little bit over here that will be melded into the watercolor painting, because there's a little bit of brown over here. And there's a little bit of brown through here that this kind of dissipated through here, but I did put it in here too. It kind of travels across. And I don't know how it shows up on your screen. It's very light here in front of me, but on my monitor, it's probably 50% darker. And I've adjusted these masses, if you've noticed, so that this isn't that far off to the right. I've kind of pulled it out a little bit more, just so that the masses are balanced a little bit better. Usually what I use instead of cadmium yellow medium from Coors, I'll use a dairy lied yellow. I couldn't get that this time, so I ordered a different yellow. Okay, Barb, do you have anything to show me yet?
Yes.
Okay, good. Everything's nice and soft. We're gonna build, a little bit slower on this than having extreme darks at the beginning. Or
Okay.
dark darks, that's fine. Lori, what do you have to show me? Okay, great, wonderful, super. Deborah, you want to show me again what you got? Yep, that's where you want to be. Very good. Marge? Okay, let's get it in focus. Why isn't that focusing? That's weird. What I'm seeing there in an unfocused state, it looks pretty good. I don't know why it's not focusing. Reminds me when I don't have my glasses on reading a book. Okay, Janet. How you doing? Okay, good. Right up in front here, Janet, in the water area where those little rapids are, take your sponge or a wet paper towel and soften it all up, right through here. Then you'll be fine. And Diana, how you doing?
Hold on. Okay, is that
What?
better?
Yes, much better. Yes,
Okay.
that's where you want to be. I just want to take a moment. I got new catalogs from Core Paint. I talked to a rep quite a bit. If you can see this, I'll hold it up over here. This is the color I'm using, the cadmium yellow medium. They have different variations all the way down to nickel yellow, but it goes from cooler to warmer. And then this is the cadmium yellow deep. It has a little bit of a red in it. And this is the Dairy Light yellow, which is a very, very warm yellow. This is the one I tried to order, but it was out of stock. And then Indian yellow, I have a couple tubes of that, which is a yellow orange or an orange. But always take a look at what you're getting. If you can get a catalog or something from showing up. But you can see that here's the cadmium red medium, and here is the pyroli red medium here, which this is more of a true red than this is. So you have to kind of shop around. Years ago, they used to allow you, they used to have colors out and so forth, but there's all sorts of different blues here, ultramarine blue violet, then the cobalt blue here, and cerulean blue chromium, which is pretty close to the French cerulean blue down here. But you take a look at all these colors and they have, it's kind of fascinating to take a look. And what they also do in this catalog, which is really nice, they have a black line through the middle here, okay, of the color. That shows you whether it's transparent or more opaque or opaque. So in other words, the Venetian red's very opaque over here. You can't see the black line go through it. And this one is very transparent, which is the transparent yellow oxide. And the yellow ochre is semi-transparent. So you get kind of an idea. I like the way they do their catalog.
How did you get the catalog?
I called my rep.
Okay.
She's out of Michigan. Marilee and I met her down in Indianapolis at the Watercolor Society of Indiana. And that's how Marilee won a set of Core paints that I've been experimenting with ever since. And I really like them.
Are you gonna be handing those catalogs out at Dillman's?
I'm going to be handing the catalogs out at Dillman's. That's why I got them.
And little paint dabs too.
And we also got little paint dabs on them in the box right there.
Except I'm going to be in Maine when you're at Dillman's.
Oh.
Why don't you take my class in Dillman's and I'll go to Maine? I've never been to Maine yet.
Oh, sure. I can go up there and make a mess of the pages just like you do.
Okay, good.
Just kidding.
I'll be at Dillman's.
But everybody's going to get, these are like little dabs of color that they give you. You can wet them and use them. Just to give you an idea of what colors they are. I think the most expensive color on here is the cobalt violet. They even give you a little piece of paper to fool around with. I didn't have these last year because I ran out, but I will have them this year. Okay.
Dale,
Yes.
I'm on my computer now. You may be able to see this better.
Oh, yes. Okay, good. You're fine.
Okay,
I wonder what the problem was.
it's my iPad. I don't know, because it's the only thing I have a problem with is when I try to do this with you in your class, and I hold my picture up.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the camera seems to be working fine. So I don't know.
So it must be me.
No, I don't think it's you. But I have another class. I have an iPad class, so I'm going to have to ask her next week. Right,
Yeah, they would know. Okay,
Anyway.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the background, and I'm going to take the ultramarine blue in with a little bit of the yellow medium here, like so, and a little bit of cobalt, because I want this on the cooler side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the toothbrush and I'm going to start spraying up in here, and I'll manipulate it with the brush in the middle of this. Take a little bit more over here as I'm going, and I'm going to take the brush with a little bit more cobalt in it. The reason why I did that is to get a little bit of character of texture going on in there. So I'm dry brushing this in here like so. And I want to tap this off on a paper towel. And I'm going to throw a little bit of the yellow on here in a minute, because I want this to blend a little bit more softly. So we get a little bit more color in there. Then I'll take the yellow with what I have here that is on the tray already. And I'm going to drag this down it's got a little bit different color in it here at this point. And I'm going to bring it on down like so. And I'm going to go right underneath the yellow shrub here down by the shoreline, just to give this a little bit of definition. And then I'm going to soften it with just a damp brush. Now, I'm going to go in to this darker area up here. So I'm going to use the ultramarine blue and the sap green and a little bit of the yellow. We're going to kind of tease in on this and some cobalt blue. And I'm going to take and tap that off on the paper towel to dry brush it. And I'm going to come in here like so. And I'm going to be very careful around this yellow. I'm bringing the yellow up further than what it is in the photograph. And I'm also allowing the color to show through from the original wash. So I'm going to kind of sculpt around this to make this kind of an interesting shape. And then there is a shrub right back here, not a shrub, but a small sapling tree. I can't have that too light because it's going to come forward. So I'm going to take a little bit of the cobalt blue on my brush, and I'm going to ever so slightly tone it down. We're going to go darker later on. And I'm going to take some of the yellow green up in here. We're kind of sneaking up on this particular painting because we have a lot of delicate lights and darks back in the background that I want to try to maintain. And I'm going to go to my smaller cat tongue brush, and I'm going to make a darker statement underneath here down by the creek. So I'm taking the ultramarine blue, the burnt sienna, and the sap green, and I'm going to make a darker, much darker statement. And I'm going to kind of tease that in like so. And then I'm going to take my sponge. I have that very dark, and I'm going to soften that up a bit. I don't want too many harsh edges at this point. And then I'm going to take this dark that's up through here. I'm not making any tree trunks yet. I'm going to take a little bit of cobalt blue to cool it as it goes off to this side. I'm not concerned about too much sparkling light back on this side. I'm going to take my brush or sponge again and maintain that light that's over here that I just washed across. It kind of toned it down a bit. Then I'm going to have some of these darks down in the bottom here. Not going to play with the river yet because that gets into another whole ball of wax. So I'm just going to leave that alone. But I am going to add something to the river in the background. Some burnt sienna and some of the sap green with a little bit of the ultramarine blue in it. Because it's got kind of a warmish glow to it. And I'm going to put that back in here like so. And it kind of swerves around, comes back. And then I'm going to soften it as it comes out. Now, while this is kind of drying, I'm going to add a little bit of water to it up in here. I'm going to spray just a little bit. This will give a little bit of texture. I'll take the paper towel where it's mostly dry over here, and I'm going to add just a little bit more texture to this over here. It's starting to add a little bit of texture. I'm doing it very, very lightly. I'm gonna add a little bit in that dark space there. It's just a slower way of building the painting up, and it's starting to get a stronger image on this now. So this is where I'm going to stop. I'm going to bring this down like this, because that's all kind of one unit there. And we'll leave that alone at this point. Of course, I think I'm going to pull this out a little bit more. And I'm going to pull out a little bit more light here. So I'm kind of disguising the intensity of the yellow, but with the sponge, I am going in and kind of softening this a little bit with what was already on the sponge. And the last thing I'm going to do is I don't want any hard lines, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to soften this line here quite a bit. So it gets, this is kind of out of focus the way your thing look, Marge. So you guys can go ahead and start that.
Can we get a recap?
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, what I did is I came in here with the sap green, a little bit of the burnt sienna ultramarine blue, and I dry brushed this in here, and I came across and I started adding more ultramarine blue in here, maintaining some of the original wash to come through, because that's going to help give us depth. If you notice that there's light up in here, I'm going to be very careful with that when I start putting on the darks next time. I might lighten this little area of light coming through up here, but I really want to keep this back because I don't want this to sparkle everywhere. And I came across, added more of the sap green, and then I went back and added more cobalt blue to cool it here. I pulled out, again, this light to maintain a little bit of this light. I came down in here on that bank of the creek. I got to reform it a little bit with the ultramarine blue, sap green, a little bit of the burnt sienna, and have that creek. And I kind of teased it in here, and then I softened it with the sponge. And then I have the burnt sienna with ultramarine blue down in here a little bit with a touch of the green. And then I came across and softened this. And then
Did you put any water, spray any water on it?
Yes, I sprayed water. That's what I was going to get to.
Okay.
Sprayed water up in here and just left it do its own thing. Over here, I sprayed it and I lifted. Then I took paper towel and I softly dabbed, not a lot, just to pull up some of the light, which I'll pull this up closer to the camera. You can see all the texture that was added, but that was lightly patting, not pushing down and lifting too much. I'm going to take a picture of this real quick, so hang on. Again, I'm still trying to keep everything out of focus. Do not try to define anything or have any hard edges at this time. Any questions at all?
Yes, Dale, did you do anything down at the bottom in the middle right there?
In
Did you
here?
do- Yeah,
No, I left, that hasn't been touched since the first time around, Deb.
okay.
it's Diana. Do you want to take a look, please?
Yep, here I come. Coming down the line here. Hold your camera down a little bit. All right, that's good. You're getting a little bit too dark, too quick.
Okay, where?
Up in here.
Okay, so take my sponge again, or,
What I would do in this case is I would spray it with your water bottle a little bit, or your toothbrush. Toothbrush
Okay.
might be better because it gives a more random look to it. And just pat it up a little bit. 'Cause
with
I've
paper
got this
towel?
going- I've got this going from darker here to lighter here.
That's what I was trying to do. Okay, all right, I'll
You're
give
the
it a
only
try.
heavy-handed person I have. Which is good to see once in a while because everybody's too timid to put down their darks too quickly. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I used to be very timid with my darks at the beginning. So they would end up being labored by the end, which you don't want to have either. We need a happy medium with you, Diana.
Yeah,
That's all right, though. It's good.
and roll it with a paper towel or just pat it with paper towel?
Just pat it lightly. I've had this hair dryer since 1979, Montgomery Wards. Still works good. All right, I'm gonna come along and see how everybody's doing. Marge, how are you doing? Now that we have you in focus.
I was on mute because my dogs bark. And
Oh.
so you didn't hear me when you said, Marge, how are you doing? And I groaned.
That's all right. Mine just came down here, swiped something, and ran back upstairs. Okay, you're
Okay.
fine, good.
Is it-
Right in here, see if
Yep.
you can lift this up a little bit. We're too dark right in this area here.
Okay,
Because we're gonna use a little bit more yellow in there.
alrighty.
And do it softly. You don't have to do it too hard.
Okay.
Janet, how are you doing? Okay. Take your sponge or your paper towel and soften this up right in here and over here. This is all very soft up in here and over here. Everything else is good though. Deborah, how are we doing here? That's good. Okay, fine. Very good. And Lori? Okay, good. Wonderful. And finally, Barb.
Okay.
Okay, take your paper towel and, well, no, I'm gonna say leave it alone. Because we are gonna sharpen this up a little bit as we go through it, but leave it alone.
Okay.
All right. We're gonna get back into it. And I'm gonna start off on the left-hand side here. And kind of ease on over. We're still gonna hold off on the river just a little bit more. I might do a little bit something down here, but not too much. So I'm gonna start off with the cobalt blue. And a little bit of the sap green. And some of the yellow. And a little bit more cobalt blue. So as I'm always mixing, I'm kind of mixing down, if you notice. And I'm gonna add a little bit of the ultramarine blue so that I have variations I can play with as I come around back to it. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna start dry brushing. Again, I'm leaving some of those air holes show through here and there to give us a little bit of depth, and it also allows the painter to have the detail that he wants without trying to put it in. So I'm gonna kind of tease on down to this bush. I'm a little bit darker. And I'm comparing the height of this to the height of this. I want to make sure that I don't get it to be too much the same. So I'm gonna take the toothbrush and I'm gonna soften a little bit of this just with water. And I also want to take a little bit of the cobalt blue and I'm gonna put that up in here too. And that way I can add color without touching what is already existing. Then I'm gonna start teasing down into this shrub here. And I'm gonna add a few little feeling of some trees here in the background while this is wet. And it will give a little bit of complication to it without too much work done on it. And I'm gonna tone this down just a little bit here. And then I'm gonna get into the bottom part of this shrub by taking back and forth in here with the ultramarine blue green with the yellow green and find something in the middle. And I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine blue to it with some of the sap green, and a touch of the burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna is helping me gray those colors down and also making it darker. So I'm starting to form the shrub a little bit more. I'm going to take a little bit of the water with the toothbrush and soften that edge up against there. And we have this shrub coming right down in here like this. I'm going to kind of bring it back up in here, and I'm kind of tapping the watercolor up in there so that you can see it's adding soft texture without too much. And now I'm going to go and travel across the back here again, and I am going to start forming this bank here a little bit better. I'm going to add a little bit more of the burnt sienna to the green here. And this kind of comes up into here. Kind of has a soft movement going uphill, like so. And I'm allowing this edge to be kind of a fun edge in here so that it doesn't become too hard. I'm working wet into wet here at this point, which allows my edges to be soft. And I'm making sure that this has a different movement, that it's not straight across. I'm going to bring it on down a little bit darker on the overhang here. So I'm using a little bit more sap green, a little bit more ultramarine blue, and I added a touch of the burnt sienna to it again. And I keep on using the toothbrush here to soften things, because in the background, there are no hard edges. Try to remember that. Now, I'm going to tease it into the yellow shrub over here as I maneuver across. And I'm going to take just a wet brush with no pigment on it and tease it into this area right here. I'm going to dry the brush off, and I'm going to, again, dry brush this in here so we get a little variation. We do have a few tricks up our sleeve for later on, but I want this edge to show a little bit of foliage sticking out there, kind of a leafy effect. Now I'm going to go ahead and go on up above this, and I'm going to add a little bit of green to what I have here, and I'm going to come up into here just above that light that's on top of the bank there, and tease it into the shrub again, kind of remodeling the edges of this just a little bit. And I'm going to take the sponge so we're kind of teasing things in. We're not trying to be too direct at this point. I am going to bring this dark over further, and I'm also going to bring the yellow down a little bit. And then I can start with the feeling of some of these trees in the background. I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to this, and there is a couple of trees in here. I'm going to take the toothbrush with a little bit of that ultramarine blue and the sap green up in here. Mix up something that's kind of soft, and I'm going to add some variation of colors in here without touching the canvas. And they're just going to be hints of trees back there. It's not going to be overly pronounced. I hear I have one tree off to the right. I add a little bit of cobalt blue to this. It's a fairly big tree, but I'm going to lean it a little bit different. Like so. I'm going to take the toothbrush with a little bit of the yellow in it, mixed in with the blue. So it's kind of a darkish yellow green. And I'm going to tease that in here like so. And I'm going to take my smaller round brush at this point. And I'm going, these trees are going to remain very soft. I might come in here and add a little bit of detail to them. So I'm taking the ultramarine blue, the burnt sienna, mixed in with the green, because everything has a greenish tint back there to it. And I'm adding some other trees back here that are not in the photo, but I feel it needs a little bit of filling in with some more nature. I'm going to put in a little bit of those leafy feeling up here, dry brushing in with the small brush. And I'm still allowing some of that light to show through. If I want to, later on, I can define the trees a little bit more, but I want to come across here and show a little bit more variation on top over here. And I'm going to kind of very casually come off over on this side. I'm not adding a lot because I don't want my eye to be attracted off over here too much. I'm adding a little bit of yellow in here at the same time. And I'm going to add some water and color up in here just a little bit. Take my sponge, kind of soften it a little bit. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this darker green here, or blue green, and I'm going to start adding some more decisive darks down in this area. Now, I am going to take the paper towel, and you can see on how I'm slowly building this up. I'll pull it up so you can see it a little bit. I want to pull these little dark spots off of here. And then I'm going to take the paper towel and I want to show a little bit of light sticking up over here, just a slight bit that it is receiving some light. And then we can concentrate on the lower half in the next sequence. I think I'm going to leave it alone right there. So I'm going to pull this up so you can see it. The dimension that I have in the background, showing the first washes here and there, the second washes, but it's getting that depth that I'm looking for. There we go, that's better. So you have to have patience in building it up very slowly. I'll work with the stream next, but just to go back, I started off over here dry brushing. And I came down here and played a little bit with this shrub in here down to the water line. Then I came back and I added some more distinct darks in the bank where it's dark there as the river flows around. I made sure that the shape of this was very irregular. Then I went up and added more in here. with the blue greens with a little bit of the burnt sienna mixed in with it, and ultramarine blue to make it darker, allowing a lot of this to have shape. And I'm gonna reform some of the trees, but not a lot. And I allowed things to come through from the first washes. I sprayed a little bit of water up in here to make it flow. Then I came across over here and modeled around this shrub on the bank. And then this was the yellowish green with a little bit of the ultramarine blue in it, just to soften this up. How dark this will go will determine, there'll be some other determining factors on how dark I want it to be, because I don't want this dark going all the way across the top. I want something to kind of stop the eye. So I'll worry about that later. So that's what we did in here. I maintained this in here a little bit. The only thing that I would do, because it's getting a little bit too sharp back there, because we are somewhat in the shadow, is I'm going to take and soften this with my damp brush there, like so. And that's where we end. So you guys can go ahead and get started, and questions I know will appear. Because now it's starting to get a little bit more interesting in its look. I'm going to take a quick picture and I'll put it right back up. But a lot of the background I handled when it was still wet, not damp, but wet, so that the transition from one color to the other, there was no sharp edges back here, no hard edges. So try to maintain that softness back there, but still give a little bit of shape to it.
Dale, when you use the toothbrush, what colors are you going in with?
Well, I used the toothbrush with water mostly this time, but up in here, I added a little bit when it was wet of the cobalt blue up in this area here. But most of the toothbrush that I did use was just with water, and I gave it that texture that's going on through up in here so that you can see a little bit of texture. Let me hold it up a little bit closer to the camera. You can see that texture going on up there.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was going
Yeah.
for.
That was mostly with the water when it was wet. And I did a little bit of lifting with it, but not a whole lot at the beginning. I just did it towards the middle of it so that it wasn't pulling up too much. It was semi-dry. I'm trying to emulate what's there, but not put in everything to where it's labored. I want just a suggestion of what's going on in the background. I am not allowing too much of that light to sparkle through because it will interrupt with what's going on in the foreground. I'm going to turn on the dryer just for a minute, so hang on. I'm gonna come along and see where you're at this point. Barb, I'm gonna start with you. Can you show me where you're at so far?
Okay.
All right, that's good. All right, fine. Lori, how are you doing? Okay, good. That edge that you have going up and around here, that's very light. I'm going to break that up in the future, but we're not going to have too much light showing through this edge here because it has to recede. So this comes out. So you've got this a little bit too light. So if you do a quick wash across it with a little bit of the cobalt blue and a little bit of the yellow medium, you should be fine. Deborah, how are you doing? Okay, your dark spot here needs to come over to, oh, I see you got it coming over there. Okay. All right. Leave it alone then. You could probably take a little bit of toothbrush with water in here and pull it up. I've got a little bit of texture going on in there, if you could see that. Just spray with a little bit of water with the toothbrush and lift it.
Okay,
Just so it's not too dark and dense looking. Janet. Okay, same thing. You want to try to lighten this up a little bit by spraying a little bit of water on it here. Right in this area there, just a little bit. You're fine. Marge, how you doing? Hold it a little bit closer to the camera. Okay, that's coming along. Okay, good. And last but not least, Diana.
Hold on a sec, I gotta move.
That's all right.
Okay,
I don't see the, okay, hold your camera down a little bit more and then pull back on it. Okay, you can soften that yellow area a little bit more in here. I'm gonna,
Okay.
it's not gonna be so intense when I get done with it, but I wanna maintain as much of it as I can at this point. Okay, good. I'll give you a few more minutes and then we'll get started again.
soften with a sponge, you think?
The edges around
Right.
the edge, just soften it a little bit. I'm gonna take it down for a second. I gotta get a picture of it when it's dry. Okay, here we go. We're gonna get started here. And I am going to work the water coming down. And I'm gonna take some sap green here and some burnt sienna and a little bit of the cobalt blue. Because it has a little bit more warmth to it than what you may think it does. And I'm going to come in here and move this around through here very carefully. Add a little bit more blue to it back in here. So I'm kind of coming into this shrub here a little bit.
Can you repeat those colors, please?
That was the sap green, the burnt sienna, and a little bit of cobalt. And I'm being very careful. There is a bit of a shoreline of some rocks and what have you back here. It's a small skinny patch. I'm trying not to have that come forward. So I'm being very careful with that. And I'm going to take it right on over to the bright tree over here, like so. And I'm going to try to get it to kind of tuck underneath it there. So there's a little bit of an end to it and bring it up into that shrub there. And then I'm going to come across with some of the sap green and the yellow light as we're picking up reflection of everything around it. Like so. And that's going to slide right on over in front of that shrub there. I'm going to bring it right on up in here, like so. So we start to see a little bit of that water starting to take place. Then I'm going to come with the cobalt blue with a little bit of the green in it, not too much, so that you can see it's grayed down ever so slightly. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. So I get a little bit more intense, and I'm going to come in here, and some of these, the rocky portions are in shadow here. So I'm going to add a little bit of that cobalt blue to that, and it kind of comes across, and then it gets a little bit lighter. So I'm kind of teasing it along here, and add a little bit more cobalt blue right in here. And it comes right up into here a little bit. And then we have a little bit of burnt sienna and the yellow off on this side here. It starts picking up the warmth. I want to work that fairly light. And I'm kind of dotting and dashing along through here to simulate some of the rocks and so forth. And then we get into the more of the warmer color up front here, just by a slight bit. And then we're going to go back into the green and the burnt sienna with a little bit of the cobalt. A little bit more green, a little bit more yellow. And we're going to come right down into here like so. And it's right in this particular area here. I'm going to meld it with a little bit of the green and the ultramarine blue on the right-hand side of it. Right in here. And I'm kind of taking it back and forth here. A little bit more blue as I come off over here. And I'm just kind of allowing it to build in together. That little bit of light that's in here, I'm not going to worry about. There's a little bit of light patch right here. I'm going to allow a little bit of light to show through. But then as we come out over here, we have a little bit more of that darkness in here showing up. So I'm kind of weeding back and forth through here. And there's one little spot up here. I don't know why I feel it's important, but I'm going to pull that out because it's a little bit warmer. It's receiving a little bit of light, like so. I'll keep that brush in hand. And then we have the cobalt blue that's kind of streaming out through here, a little bit more blue. So we have all the colors showing up somewhere in the stream here. Need a little bit more blue. Right in here, there we go. And then it just sort of fades down. It has a little bit of the yellow in it, a touch of the green as it comes down in here. So it's kind of a rainbow of colors that everything is up in here. So we add a little bit more blue as it comes across, like so. And then we add a little bit more yellow as we come across into this area here, because it's picking up all those colors that from up above here. And what I'm going to do off on the side here is I'm going to add some dark to it. A little bit of darkish green with a little bit of sap green and the burnt sienna in it. And I'm going to hit it with the toothbrush with a little bit more yellow in here. I'm going to worry about a lot of the movement in the water later on. And I'm going to allow this to fall a little bit by tipping the board up, spraying it with a little bit of water so it all kind of melds together a little bit. Like so. So we're starting to have the feeling of the water flowing through here. And while I've got this still wet, I'm going to take a little bit of the cobalt blue. I want to add that a little bit more in here, a little bit more bright, some accents. Now, we're going to go up into this area here. And I'm going to take a little bit of the grayed down yellow green. And I'm going to kind of tease this in up here because this I need to tone down. And I'm going to tone it right into the back of this shrub. And then I'm going to take the ultramarine blue with the sap green and a touch of the yellow again. And I need to take this and tone this down back here. And I'm going to go in different angles of this so that I have a little bit of that texture showing through, adding a little bit more cobalt blue. I'm going to add some more distinct darks up in here. And some down in here to kind of make it fall off a little bit. And then some yellow light down in here. Then I'm going to spray it. First, I'm going to clean my palette off because I want to get this part situated. And I'm going to spray this with a little bit of water so it all softens up. And then I'm going to plant a few distinct darks in the shoreline right here. So I have the sap green and the ultramarine blue with a little bit of the burnt sienna, not too much. I just need to have it gray down a little bit. And I'm going to start modeling this area in here very carefully. And underneath that shrub right there. So I'm diminishing the size of this so that we don't end up with this big yellow spot on the paper. I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow and add it to this green here. So we have different variations of the green going on. So it's starting to take better shape at this point. So I'm kind of whittling down the space of how much it should be as opposed to what it was. Take a little bit more ultramarine blue. Some of the sap green. And I'm going to start modeling this part back in here a little bit. Take a little bit of the sap green on the toothbrush mixed in with that brownish green. And I'm going to start modeling this in here just ever so slightly. Again, softening it and kind of manipulating the form a little bit so that it's starting again, like I said, to take a little bit better form. And some more of the green is going to go up in here. Be a little bit more vibrant. Now I'm going to work up on top of this. This has to be a little bit darker to close in on it. It isn't in the photograph. It's got a lot of sparkly light up there, but I need to make this darker up in here to push this down. And I'm going to bring some of that dark green in certain areas down to the bottom. Like so. And a few of these accents will set this off a little bit more of where I need it to be. Because we have a lot of light that's going off and on over here on the upper right-hand side, which is not what we need for the composition. A little bit of cobalt blue in here. And we have this real bright light spot here. We don't need that either. That's a distraction to the eye. And I add a few branches up through here. And I am going to take the sponge cleaned off here, because again, we're going to manipulate this a little bit further as we go through it, but I'm going to stop at this point. But I want a little bit of that yellow or light showing right back here to kind of balance that off. So I'm going to take the yellow by itself, a little bit of that blue green, and I'm going to hit it right in here to help that balance off, and a little bit down here. And I'm going to take a little bit off over here, and I need to move this color around a little bit in different forms to help balance that off. And I'm going to spray a little bit down here. So now what we have is starting to pull together much quicker and faster. The only other thing that I may do is I'll add some more trees up in here and shrubs, but I don't want to add too much, but I'm going to add a little bit of a darker, deeper yellow in here. A little bit right there. So I'm looking at this from a distance, trying to balance some of these things off in here, a little bit down here. So that's where we'll end up. So to recap, I started here at the bottom of the creek with a little bit of the sap green, the burnt sienna, a little bit of the ultramarine blue. And I'm looking at the way this moves in here and comes around. Then I added cobalt blue in here. And I came down in here and added the sap green and the burnt sienna. It's a little bit warmer green in here. And I came across and added, this is all going to get darker, but now you can start to see as I bring this up here on how this is beginning to look. So there's not a lot of form in the river showing yet, but there will be. But this is the basis for everything that's supposed to be up in that area. And now this is toned down back here. And I added more of the green up in here with the ultramarine blue, the burnt sienna, and the yellow medium, and I dry brushed it up in here. But we're gonna get a little bit darker in the background in the next phase. I'm gonna pat this off just ever so slightly. Take a picture of it here. I'll be right back. Don't go away.
Do you need me?
No, I just came up to get something.
Oh, Janet just called. They lost power. That's why she's not there.
Oh, geez. I was wondering what happened to her.
Yeah.
She disappeared off the
I
scope.
told her. Said to her, well, I'm gonna tell him that you just discussed with the whole thing and you left. All right, I'm calling you. Uh-oh. Hard to close with your coat on.
I was wondering where Janet went. Nothing like losing power in the middle of the,
Her husband's on a conference call right
Oh my God, that's even worse.
Come on, Poppy. I think I know where it is.
It's one upstairs. Any questions at all? No questions. Yes,
I don't
Laura.
have a question, Dale, but with this being multiple step and multiple areas, I'm just gonna watch for the rest of the video, for the rest of the Zoom, and then I'll watch the video.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. But I'll keep you, I'll still be here.
All right, we lost Janet. She lost her power at her
Okay.
house. Yeah, I have to admit, Lori, this one has a few more steps in it than the other ones usually have.
And that's fine. I really enjoy the format of this class, so I can follow along as far as I can.
Good.
And go back and just watch the video, and you'd
Yeah.
laugh how many times I repeat and repeat and repeat. Now, what was that combination? Where was that? And
Yeah.
but I get it then. So
Yeah, that's all right. This is the one reason why we do the video and send it
Mhm.
back out to the students, because it benefits them to go over what we did in class, listen to it
Yep.
a couple times, and then they can go back into what they're doing.
yeah, I think I'm going to even make a color chart to help me with, you know, when you're talking about the warm colors and the cool colors, and just kind of make a weird little sketch for myself to kind of block that in my mind, because with me being fairly new to all this, you know, it's not intuitive.
I can understand that. And I had several comments, including the student that was staying with us through Dillman's 4-day workshop. And
Okay, yeah.
she's been in my, well, I started with her, she started with me 40 years ago. And then she went off on interior design, and she's been painting in between and so forth. And she does a number of things now, including real estate and design work. And
Mhm.
I says, tell me what you think of me taking the first half of the class on the first day at Dillman's and going over color theory and explaining and demonstrating what people could do with this, this, and this, and doing a little sketch instead of the students painting. They can listen, take notes, and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And she says that would be a great idea. It'd be a good refresher, even for her that's been doing it all this time.
Uh-huh.
So that's what I'm going to be doing the first half of the first class of Dillman's, is talking about color theory and the colors themselves and temperatures and values and intensities and so
Yeah.
forth, so that the student understands hopefully better how to use the pigments during the 4-day workshop.
Okay. Well, I see that you have a 3-week class coming up.
Yes, and that
And
is-
so here's
that-
my question.
yes.
Do you, well, I'm going to be on vacation for part of it, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not, but each time you do these classes, are you working on different pictures and with different
Always.
themes?
Yes. Yeah, I'm picking out different subject matter as I have done all the way along. So that you're learning different things, how to handle different subject matter. There'll probably be another subject matter with buildings, but something a little bit further away in the field.
Okay.
But I always try to have the student do different things.
So a person could continue going with you throughout your different
and
sessions.
I'm not going to repeat that much at all, if any.
Mhm.
I have,
So
but I've done it in a different way.
yeah, okay. Because I didn't know if it was like, okay, you're going to do repeats for all the new students, or if the old students can come back in and go, okay, I'm painting a different picture, I'm getting a little bit better at it. If I showed any of the students my ones from Dillman's when I was sick, they would be like, oh, you've come a long way. But yeah, okay.
Every year it is different at Dillman's with subject matter. And I decided to change it up a little bit and get into a little bit more detail on that very first class in the morning about the color theory. Because you know, doing workshops as long as I have, there's been a lot of people that don't have the color theory behind them. I'm also going to be demonstrating different techniques that we're going to be using. The fact that I've come to realize that not everybody is intermediate or advanced. There's a lot of beginners, which is fine. I like to see these leaps and bounds in learning with the beginners, because being in a class that has multi-levels is really good for the students, because they can see what's going on even next to them. So it's kind of a fun thing, but I thought I need to change this up a little bit and do something a little bit different. And I have pretty much about the same thing all the way through. I changed something up and I thought, let's do something a little bit more drastic, introduce a stronger color theory section of the workshop.
Well, for anybody wondering whether or not they should go to Dillman's, it's lovely. The cabins are lovely. The hosts are lovely.
Yes.
The classrooms are excellent. How it's set up. Betty and I had a wonderful time there.
That's good. This Saturday, I have a Facebook Live demonstration starting at noon, and it's going to involve one of the cabins of Dillman's.
Okay.
And if you are available for an hour and a half or so, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, I like the Northwoods too. That's a special place in my heart just because
Yeah.
it's so relaxing up there.
It is to a great extent, and I have a lot of connections up there over the years with workshops and classes that I teach. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to living up there. It's one of my dreams.
Yeah. I can't get my husband to go north. He wants to go south. So that's why we're in Indiana.
Well, I mean, I've been going up there since I was a year old, and I'm enthralled
Yeah.
with what the surroundings
Yeah.
give me for my artwork and stuff. And I
My
drag
dad
my,
had to go to Minnesota. So I
Yeah.
was a customer in Minnesota, but I love Wisconsin also.
oh, I drag my wife to all these waterfalls, and usually
Okay.
at least once during one of these trips that I drag her into the Upper Peninsula, I get lost for about an hour. And I says, well, we can't get too lost because there's a major highway north of us and another
Yeah.
small road left of us. So it's, we don't get lost for that long,
Okay. Yeah.
but I do that quite often.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna come around, take a look so we can finish this up. And let's start with you, Diana, first.
Okay. Can you see it?
Hold your camera down a little bit more to your left. There we go. Okay. We're gonna soften this yellow ball up quite a bit more, but you're fine.
Okay.
Marge, how are you doing? Okay, good. You're there. That's where you want to be.
Okay,
Wonderful. Deborah, are you there? I'll come back to you, Deborah. Barb, I see what you have, please. Okay, good. Wonderful. And let me take a look at yours once again, Lori.
Okay. That's as far as I am.
Okay, you're fine though. You've got a great, strong start, so don't worry. And
Yeah.
Deborah,
So whoops, let me talk. I'm just going to stop starting with the video and I'll finish it up.
Okay.
Next.
and send it to me in email so I can
Okay.
tell you what's going on. Okay,
Okay.
Deborah, how are you doing here? Okay, you're good.
It's okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I had to plug up on my cord is, my power is down, so I had to go get my cord.
Oh, geez. All right, let's get back to what we're doing. I'm gonna handle this over here. This is gonna be, I'm gonna go through the background and make this a little bit darker. So I'm gonna start with the sap green and the ultramarine blue. And we're using the burnt sienna to gray because it's a red. I'm gonna use a little bit more blue here. And I'm gonna go in right to this area here. We're gonna make this a little bit darker and bring it on down. And I'm gonna take the toothbrush to soften that out. And I'm not gonna connect it. I'm gonna kind of go a little bit here, a little bit there, put a tree in. I just need to push this out a little bit more. So I'm being very careful on how much I'm adding and subtracting from the light. Now, as I go across, maybe a little bit more blue-green and just gray it slightly. And I am going to come down in here. I'm going to start making these trees a little bit darker and then add the, I want to put in one tree right here. So I'm going to come in with my smaller brush. Add a little bit more green to this. And I'm going to start modeling around the bush a little bit more and reshaping parts and pieces of it. So I'm diminishing it a little bit at the same time. And I'm going to come out here with a little bit of foliage. We need to make that a little bit darker. I'm also comparing back and forth of where certain darks need to be. And then I'll soften it.
What are those colors again, Gail?
This is a different combinations of the sap, the ultramarine, and the burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna, being a red, is gonna gray green down because they're complements. And I'm gonna come down in here and darken this. So I'm adding quite a bit of color variations to this. I'm also gonna take my smaller brush at this point, my smaller round brush with the different color combinations of that. And I'm going to add a few more trees in here. And I want to bring down a few trees right into the foreground here so that they're not all behind it. They are encroaching on the river here, the creek. And I'm going to put in a few branches. And then I'm going to start traveling across, making some darker passages through here. And again, that's pushing out this yellow shrub. And then I'm going to skip across through the middle here, and I'm going to add some more leaves here, but a little bit lighter, not as dark as what's over here. And I keep on changing value and temperature and color as I go across. And I'm going to come down here to the bottom. It's a little bit darker because it's receiving less light. And I'm going to tone this whole yellowish patch down here because I don't want that sticking out. And then I'm going to emphasize this tree back here a little bit. And I want to emphasize the bottom of this tree and a little bit up on top, so allow some of the things to come and go through the foliage. And I'm minimizing this shape back here now by putting some darks across it. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add some more foliage. And I'm still showing, believe it or not, the original wash. Getting a little bit more green. The original wash is still showing through here and there. And I'm dragging and dry brushing the background here in different ways to show kind of foliage going this way without trying to paint the foliage. Leaf by leaf or branch by branch. Now I'm coming up into this area, the bank here that has a little bit more of the burnt sienna in it. And that bank here needs to be a little bit darker and will come up a little bit more. Like so. And I'm going to take that color and move it down with a little bit more burnt sienna in it. So I want this to be a little bit warmer back here. So we come down like so, and then I'm going to put this dark in here that has that movement in here, and it comes across and tucks underneath the shrub there. And then I want to soften this up a little bit because hard edges will attract the eye. What I'm trying to do is keep things out of this area of being too hard edged out here. I want the hard edges in here. So I'm being very conscious of that. Then as we come out towards the light a little bit more, I'm going to take a little bit of the burnt sienna and the yellow, and I'm going to bring that across through here like so. And underneath the tree right here, or that shrub that's illuminated, I'm going to add a little bit of green, adding a little bit of brown to the green to tone it down. And some of that dark underneath that shrub there. And then a little bit more water to lighten the value as we go up into the shrub here. And I'm going to tone down kind of the background of the shrub. And I'm also going to go into the shrub to show the parts that are in and out. Some receiving light, some not receiving light. So it's a matter of how dark I want certain things to be. And I'm looking at the whole picture. I'm wandering around like you wouldn't believe with my eyes. If you were inside my head, you could see some of this going on. But I want to add some lighter value trees back here at different intervals, different thicknesses. And then travel back down the side of the creek here by adding some accent darks. I'm going to soften this up just a little bit. I'm not trying to make anything out of this over here. I'm trying to make it having semi-form, but not too much. Because if I do too much over here, again, the eye will be attracted to areas I don't want it to be attracted to. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the cobalt blue mixed in with this blue green here, or that yellow green, a bit more. And I'm going to simulate some of the rocks that are in here. I'm not going to get carried away with it because it would take me too long. But different sizes, different values, just to give the idea of what's going on here. I'm going to warm it up with a little bit of the burnt sienna that was mixed in with the green. As we come out into the light, I'm going to have a little bit different look upon it. And then I'm going to go for the very dark green with a lot of brown and blue in it. And I'm going to put that right in here. I'm going to take my 1-inch brush and I'm going to soften it up against this part of the creek. And add a little bit of cobalt blue into it at this point. And I'm just going to let it glide down a little bit like so by waving the brush back and forth. I'm going to add a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit of this mixture of yellow to that. And I have that mixture over here. And I'm just emulating the feeling of what's going on in the creek, not trying to do anything more than that, because I can lift later on if I need to. Now I'm going to add a lot of ultramarine blue, and we have this little bit of darkness going on in here. And I'm very casual about it. And that darkness travels right across through that shrub and a little bit in here. Like so. And then I want to finish that shrub off. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to this mixture right here because it's a little bit warmer. And I'm dry brushing up in there to a great degree. Kind of cutting down on the size of it. I've got too much light down at the bottom, so I need to tone that down. And what I'll do is I'll take, because there's always a little bit of light reflection of the water up against the bank. I'm going to pull out just a little bit there and a little bit back in here. So then I'm going to travel across with more of the cobalt blue mixed in with that green, so it's slightly grayed down. Like so. And it has a little bit of this and that in it. I'm going to bring that out to the green here. That little light spot that's right here, I kind of like. Then I'll take the green, sap green, with the cobalt blue and a little bit of the yellow. And I'll finish off this part over here. Now, again, it's not what you call finish, but it has the idea of what you need to do. Now, at this point, I'm going to clear off the palette completely. And I'm going to start using the white gouache with my small brush. I have a number 5 round here that I'm using. And I'm going to model. I'm going to take the white gouache here and I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it. Like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the shrub mostly yellow, but I want to add a little bit of accent of some of the finer leaves on this. That gets a lot of light. Now, by adding white to the paint, I'm making it opaque. I'm going to show you how to make it translucent in a second here. But I'm adding another dimension to, I'm going to add a little bit of green to it. I'm adding another dimension to the watercolor, which is perfectly legal. I add a little bit of green down here. Unless you're going into adding or going into a juried show that says you cannot use white gouache or white paint, which you can get into that very easily. The Transparent Watercolor Society of America does not allow you to use white gouache, so you don't. So I'm just adding a little bit. Now, I'm going to take a lot of water, put this back up here, a lot of water with this, so it becomes translucent. And I'm going to add that in here to add a little bit of character there and a little bit here. It gets milky, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to add a little bit of lightness over here. And when it dries, it won't dry as light as when it is when you're putting it down. I'm going to add just a little bit of light tipped leaves in here. So. And then I'm going to take a lot of white and I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt blue to it. Not a whole lot. Just shows you a different way that you can do a watercolor. And I'm going to add this milky substance, a lot of water. And I'll move it around with my finger a little bit. And this can actually gives it another dimension. And I'm just looking for certain factors that I feel are important to the painting at this point. So I add a little bit more blue as we go off into the shadow here. I'm gonna add a little bit more of that yellow with the white in it. Right up in here. Some people call it cheating. It's not. It's still painting. And when I taught college, I taught them all different ways to handle the watercolor. I still do that with certain classes that I teach. Any questions yet? Any answers? But there's all sorts of things you can do with this that makes a painting a little bit more interesting. I'm going to take and add a few branches out of the shrub here. There's some underneath trunks of this. Go to my rigger. Same basic colors, but a little bit lighter. You can add see if we can emphasize a few things in the water and add a lot of water to this, a little bit more white. And let's take a little bit of the cobalt blue here. I'm going to add a little bit of, I'm going to tip it up a little bit so I can see it. We add a little bit of cobalt spray right back in here, a little bit over here. And I'm going to pull out a little bit of light up in here. So it ends up having a little bit more value change. I'm going to add a little bit of light taken out there. And the final thing I'm just adding is accents of color here and there to give it a little bit more sparkle.
Hey Dale, this is Marge. I've got to go because I have a 2:30 appointment, but I have a
Okay.
quick question for you.
Yes.
Would you mind if I use this photo to do a totally different kind of painting? When I looked at it, it just reminded me so much of pointillism. And I would just like to play with it and do that. And I
You,
realize it's your photo, which is why I'm asking.
no, you
Is-
can do anything you want to do.
Okay, great.
That's
Great.
fine with me.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I'll see you next week. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm taking off the tape at this point so you can see where we ended up. There's only a few things I would do to this. Pull out a few more lights in the back, but not too many. But that's where we're at right now. I don't know what time it is. Well, we got just a few minutes left, unfortunately.
Yeah, what did you do with the rocks here in this white area right there?
I added just dots and dashes in here. Let me show you a little bit closer here. I didn't add too much.
Okay,
The idea was just to simulate something there without getting into a great amount of detail. There's always a few things I would do. Now, in other words, I feel that we need a little bit of color back in here, just a slight bit, to move that yellow around. But I didn't do really too much with the rocks because it's such a small portion of the painting that I felt that it would kind of detract. But this is where we're ending up, basically. And I'm just adding a few accents of color back in here. I'd probably do a little bit more with it, but that's where we ended up. I wanted this bush to glow out here. I think it's glowing. I'm gonna add a little bit more off over here. Just a slight bit, a little bit here. Just so it balances off just a little bit more. And a little bit here. And I think a little bit up in here, just to give, I'm trying to move that color around because I ended up, to be very truthful, of isolating it a little bit too much. So by pushing that color around will help unify the painting, I think, just a little bit more. But that's where we ended up. And on my screen, that's really lit up. Here, it's not that lit up, which is interesting. But I just wanted to give you an idea of how to handle the water very briefly, how to handle it simply without getting into too much detail. I'd probably do a little bit more over here, but I have to balance things off. How much do I want over here as compared to here? This needs to be simpler than this, and that's what I initially did.
and that lit up part, that's because you used the white?
This right here,
Yeah,
yeah, a little bit more, but the whole bush is kind of lit, which is fine. You can have illuminating spots in a painting. And again, I would probably, to finish this up, is move this color a little bit back here, subdued, but not as bright as it is here. I just need to help balance that off a little bit. But this shrub is picking up a little bit of that light. This is in full light. So I need a little bit more light right up in here, maybe a tad off over here in this area. So the little finishing touches is what I usually do in the last hour of painting, not touching the painting all the time, but examining what I need to do. So I would probably add a little bit in here, a little bit more in here, and then subdued the yellow back in here a little bit to have it kind of filter through the background, but not pop out at us.
awesome.
Well, thank you. There's a few things I would have to do, but I think that's with any painting. I usually leave my painting in the studio for at least a day. And I look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye. But I like to look at it for a while so that I can see what needs to be done. Is there anything else that needs to be done? But it's all small stuff.
Well, I'm going to sign on out and I'll wait for your video then. Thank you.
Oh, okay, you're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye. Have a good Easter too. Forgot
Yeah,
about it. Sneaks up on you.
I know.
I'm gonna do the same, Dale, and I'll send you,
Please do. Final painting.
yeah. All right, thanks.
All right, you have a good weekend.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Dale, I'm going to, and Marilee, I'm going to leave also. I have some Easter cookies that I have to make.
Okay, I understand.
So this was absolutely fun. I really like this. Thank you so much.
You're
See you
welcome.
next.
See you next Thursday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Dale, it's Diana. Could you take one more look before
Yep.
I sign off?
I certainly will.
All right.
Hold your camera down and to the left a little bit more if you could. All right, you're getting there. That's good.
Alright.
It came,
What?
the form came out a little bit different than mine, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
My trees are too bold. So what am I doing that makes them too pronounced?
You're getting them too dark, number one, or not, you may be doing both, but what I've done here is that the trees are a closer value to what's in the background. So it makes them look softer.
Okay,
So
Okay.
it might be the value around the trees.
well, I just put some toothbrush green, and ultramarine blue to sort of darken the background a little bit. So, okay,
All right,
I'll play with it, and if it looks any different, I'll send it to you.
okay, that'd be great.
Thanks. See you
Okay.
next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.